I'm here to give a brief demo of the Fast Connector Framework, otherwise known as the FCF, and how it can be used with messaging framework to populate messages into Scribe Online's platform message queue. The Fast Connector Framework is a part of Scribe's toolkit, which allows individuals the ability to extend functionality of the platform. It's a Visual Studio project template which sets up most of the prerequisites needed to create a simple connector for Scribe Online. The FCF is designed to allow a developer or business analyst with limited knowledge of Scribe Online to create a basic connector in a matter of minutes instead of days or weeks. The reason why it's so simple is it does flatten out the data, which may not be desirable in some situations. The original FCF came out in 2015 and allowed and enabled the creation of simple connectors which could connect using HTTP to a third-party system using JSON and XML in the payload. The reason why the framework is called fast is it refers to the amount of time that it takes someone to stand up a simple connector. The FCF does not replace the need for a full connector development kit, CDK. There will be times where the FCF is just too simple for complex APIs where the CDK can be used with any API. This video will show you how to set up the Scribe Online connector for processing asynchronous messages. When completed, this allows a map to be created which will have a custom URL defined for receiving messages into a queue. These messages can trigger off a map which can use the data or trigger off the retrieval of data from another system to complete the solution. In our example today, we're using a system called Stripe, which is a payment gateway. Stripe can be configured to fire off a simple JSON message every time a customer is created. In Scribe Online Map, you can set up the message to receive this payload, take the record's unique key, and enrich the data from details from another system, and then do the final updates in our target system. You might ask why this is different from our existing request reply, which is already supported by the platform. Request reply maps allow you for defining a JSON message. While this works in some situations where you need a reply, it does hold up the calling system until a response is actually processed. By using the built-in message queue capability of the platform with message maps, you avoid that altogether. You can also offload processing large amounts of data by using our built-in queue. One thing you should know about the FCF is it will flatten data that's received, which we will be showing in this example. There's help available in our CDK download, which will help to address complex data needs. If you'd like to learn more about the FCF or the CDK, we suggest you taking a look at our website at www.scribesoft.com under Products, Scribe Toolkit, CDK. There you will find the help and download for the toolkit. So to get started, I've got a checklist that I'm going to go through. Start off by getting a sample of the message from the API. In this example, we're going to use Stripe. We're going to run the FCF wizard in Visual Studio, define a name, etc., decide on the format. In our example, we're going to be using JSON. We'll update the item CS, which is added by default, and then we're going to update the connector.cs as well with some changes that we're going to make in customizing this. We'll compile the project, copy the files to a local agent, deploy the connector, and test. So let's get started here. I'm going to first start off by showing you the message that I received from Stripe. So here you see it in TextPad, pretty basic message. They'll fire this every time a customer is created. It does contain some hierarchical data, and so you'll see how this will get flattened out. So first, you would have to install the messaging framework, which is found in our toolkit. Once you install it, you can start a new project. Here you see the FCF messaging framework. I'm just going to give this a quick name here. So we're going to just call it Stripe Demo. Once I press OK, it's actually going to ask me a few questions about this connector, which I need to provide. The first is the connector type ID, which is a GUID. We're just not changing this. This is for the connector to register against the platform. We're going to give this a simple name. So, and then you can decide on the format whether this is JSON or XML. Then I would press build, and it's going to go ahead and start building everything for me. Now the key to this is to get a sample message because Visual Studio has a great feature that allows you to actually paste the JSON as classes. So the wizard is run, this is where it's going to place me with all of kind of the defaults. You'll notice over here in the Solution Explorer, I've got a section called Models, and there's the item CS that it comes by default. What I'm going to do is replace this section here with actually the JSON classes. So I'll go back over here to my message, sample message. I'm going to copy this, go back over here, and we will paste special, JSON as classes. So Visual Studio has done a lot of the hard work for me. I could certainly change any of the types here. If it figured out something as a string and it's not a string, you can update that so it's easier to deal with that over on the platform side or on Scribe Online. One thing I do notice here is it's calling the data object, and that's not going to be very clear for somebody that uses this connector when they're selecting the entity. So I'm going to change this over to customer. Then I'm going to change this, the reference, to customer. So now that I've updated these two items so the entity actually shows customer, I'm going to go over to the connector.cs and update this to reflect the change there. Root object, comma, customer, data, end, and I think that is right. So we'll go ahead and build this out. Let's pull this up. And we should get a success here, and it'll actually show me the location of my new connector. So I did get a success here. So at this point, since it is successful, I'm going to go find this to install on my agent. So here's the files that it created. You can see I'm actually going to need all of these files with the exception of the Scribe Core Connector API.dll. That one you don't want to copy over just in case of we change the version of it. You could run into some trouble there. So I'm going to go over to my agent directory here. I've got this agent running on my local laptop here. Create a new directory. I'm going to call this Stripe. And all I'm going to do is place those files in here, and I should be good to go. So let's go over to Scribe here, and I've already logged in. I'm under my organization here. I'm going to restart my agent so it discovers the new connector that has just been installed. This can take a couple of minutes, depending on if your agent is in the middle of things. In this situation, it took a couple of seconds. So right now it's restarting. It's going to go and discover any connectors that exist and look for updates, etc. So we'll wait for this to come back up. And then our next step is to actually create a new connection for this. And this should show up in the drop-down. We'll go through that as soon as this comes up. Okay, the agent is back up and running. So let's go ahead and add that connection. So here I will see Stripe, which is the one I just created. Give it a name, Stripe new customer. When it discovers the connector, it pulls the UI or the user interface that's associated with that connector. We've got a label here, and this is for the logging purposes only. So Stripe, and we're just going to hit OK. This is going to actually test the connector and set up the connection so we can use this in a map. So we'll add a solution here. This is actually going to be an integration event solution. We're just going to call this Stripe. And then the map we're going to add is actually a create message map. I'm going to add a connection. The first connection is going to be actually Stripe, new customer. So it goes ahead and checks with the connector and retrieves that metadata, which is all based on that message that I pasted over into the item.cs. So we're going to put wait for message. We're going to choose the entity, which is customer. Remember, that's what I had updated the object to. Then I'm going to add another connection here. We're going to insert this over to Azure, just as a quick sample. We'll throw a create block on there. Here I'm going to choose my account entity, and you'll see errors and warnings. It's already telling me that I need to map some fields, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use a feature called auto link. First I'm going to select all, and then you just click on the auto link and it's going to match up the names from my source, which is on the left hand side, to my target, which is Azure, on the right hand side. Just makes it a little easier. I could always just drag and drop the fields manually. To let you see what I was talking about on the flattening of the data, you start to see how the data has actually been, it starts to append the parent here. So it might not be desirable in some situations depending on the message. Message maps tend to be simpler as far as what the request is coming in, and you could just use it to trigger off a map as well. So you see here I've got some of these fields mapped on the right hand side, and I'm going to just hit OK, and it's going to validate the map for me. I'm going to put in the map exit just to make this a little bit cleaner here. And we're going to have it just exit the map after receiving the message. Doesn't need to do anything else. I've got 0 errors, 0 warnings, which is always a great sign. Hit OK. Once I hit OK, it's actually going to save the map and acquire that new URL for the message to actually be posted to. So in here, it's on preparing, so it's talking to the agent, establishing that URL. Once this comes back for wait for event, you can go back into the map, and here you've got the complete URL which is needed. I'm going to copy that, and we're going to use Postman to actually test this out. So I'm not going to save this. So I put that sample message in Postman. I'm just going to use this for testing purposes. So the URL, there it is. It's a post. I did update the header here before I actually got started. The content type is application JSON. Here's the body. I'm going to hit it send. And I got back 200, which is success. So I'm going to go back over to Scribe Online here and take a look. And here you see the message was completed successfully. 1. So it's already inserted that record into my SQL Azure data store. So pretty simple stuff. We're pretty excited about this new feature. I'm sure we're going to get some good feedback back from our customers on it. And let's just wrap up here. So just a couple of prerequisites. We do suggest that you have some knowledge of simple HTTP web services, JSON, and API use. You really don't need experience with Scribe Online. It's pretty easy with our new UI and how the agent works. But we've got some great documentation out there to help you through this. One of the prerequisites is Visual Studio 2013 Pro or higher, or you can use the community, which I'm using, .NET 4.5.2. Either sign up for a trial or have a paid subscription. So appreciate your time. Hope you enjoy using the new Fast Connector framework for messaging.